Welcome to Nebbiolo Above the Fog, a National Tasting Talk presentation on behalf of LLS from the Wine Education Department. At the Wine Education Department, we inspire, we equip, and we empower you to do the very best job you can do selling wine inside of our marketplaces. In regards to LLS, for over 40 years, LLS has been representing Italian wines at the highest level with the highest reputation, and we all know how proud we can be of this particular part of our portfolio. When you finish this presentation, you should be able to define the Nebiolo Grape to anyone, explain how the focus appellations represent that grape, and then figure out how to talk about the styles and the focus wines and where they apply to your market and where you can introduce them. But let's talk about the grape itself. Nebbiolo is arguably one of the two most quality-driven grapes in all of Italy, sandwiched right there with Sangiovese. Which one's better depends on producer and vintage. It gets its name from nebbia, which is the local word for fog. Fog inundates the vineyards during the time frame that this grape ripens. It buds very early, it ripens very late, it needs a long growing season, and Piemonte is one of, if not the only, perfect region in the world to grow the grape at this level. The wines have an ability to be both transparent in flavor, but intense and tannic. It's really a remarkable grape style that at some levels a little foreign to the modern palate, but once you get them comfortable with the idea that they're going to get tannin like they would get out of Cabernet Sauvignon, but they're going to get deftness like they would get out of Pinot Noir, for instance, they tend to get on board pretty quickly. When we talk about viticulture for the Nebiolo grape, you are dealing with a grape that likes the hillsides, a grape that likes calcareous soils. It likes well-drained soils. That's not surprising. Most all of the vines do. It's ideal pretty much between that 250 and 400 meters above sea level planting, especially if you're talking about Piemonte, although it is planted in higher elevations when you get up into Valtalina, which is very specific, and we're talking about how high altitude, mountain-grown Nebbiolo is a little different than what we're talking about in Piemonte. The most famous wine names associated with Nebbiolo would be Barolo and Barbaresco, the two main villages that give the appellations their names. You want to see a lot of sunshine on Nebbiolo. You want to see vineyards facing some version of south so that it can ripen fully all the way into the fall. Il Piemonte, or the La Langhe, is here on the screen for you, a little south of Torino. Famous village of Asti, another famous village of Alba going on there. You'll see multiple appellations there: Barbaresco, Barolo, Brero, Dolcetto Diano d'Alba, Altalanga Doliani, Dolcetto d'Ovada Superiore. Those are all the DOCGs, the most important wines of the area, although the DOCs certainly supply the larger volume: Barbera d'Alba, Dolcetto d'Alba, Dolcetto d'Ovada, and the Langhe wines, which will be labeled as Nebbiolo or Anise, Dolcetto, and then you have Nebbiolo d'Alba and Verduno Palaverga. A little more up close and personal of the Langhe, you can see that it has a regional DOC, and the regional DOC is Nebbiolo with up to 15% of other red varieties like Barbera and Dolcetto. Langhe Nebbiolo wines are often declassified Barbaresco or Barolo because they're using the younger vines, or they're concentrating what they want to call their DOCG wines. It is not like the wines from Langhe labeled Nebbiolo are everyday wines. These wines can be fantastic, and they do find a range in quality from wines that are a beautiful interpretation of Nebbiolo that is drinkable young to wines that are inherently ageable. Just depends on who's making the wine. This is a satellite image of Valtalina. So you see how it's tucked into the mountain valley. The whole region is in a valley that goes east-west, which means you can totally work on a southern exposure. You have your various appellations here. The most important to remember are Rosso di Valtalina, and then all of the single vineyards that passed you by there, Grumello, Sasella, Inferno, etc. The one unique wine here is the Spersato, which is made sort of in an Amarone style. They harvest the grapes at a natural level of ripeness, and then they air dry them in drying houses. This totally makes sense in an area where it's questionable whether you're going to get full ripeness every year in antiquity, where you would preserve your harvest, make sure you can make wine to sustain your family and your neighbors, and pull the grapes in before something bad happens to them, dry them in a protected area, make concentrated wine. So that idea of Spersato and making wines with dried grapes that's used in lots of areas of Italy is a brilliant plan of antiquity. And now we have a style of wine that we can depend on from it, which is also really cool. In Valtalina, Nebbiolo is known as Chiavenasca, a very important realization. In case you see it on label or you're seeing it in a book, that you realize that it is actually still Nebbiolo. So Giuseppe Reinoli was born in 1850 in Arigna, a small village on the Orobian side of the valley. At age of 20, he already produced and traded cereal, being the owner of the only mill in the area. Wheat, flour, and corn, essential ingredients to make bread, and polenta, typical dish of cornmeal that we have there. And then that led to the wine business. And once you get into the wine business, it's hard to get out. It's an amazing way to go through life. It's a very demure and awesome thing, even if it's a lot of hard work. So he saw that there was an opportunity there, and through that he started selling wine. So in 1905, Aldo, Giuseppe's son, was born. He was the promoter of Reinaldi Wine House, which was named after him until the present. What we find there now is that the Reinaldi property is one of the recommended properties for the area. This is one of the ownerships that's making it happen there. They have a great dedication to the task. Their wines are benchmark for the region, along with a few other producers. So I want us to be all very proud that we have the ability to sell these wines and represent Valtalina in such a noble way. Aldo Reinaldi Rosso di Valtalina is what we're going to try now. It's 100% Chiavenasca. It's temperature-controlled fermentation. It's aged in Slavonian oak. I often hear people mispronounce this as Slovenian oak. That's different. It's Slavonian oak. This is the tradition with Nebbiolo, to use larger barrels, use Slavonian oak, which offers oxidation and softening without offering a lot of flavor input, because really Nebbiolo is kind of a delicately flavored grape, and extra oak on top of it sort of mutes other flavors, especially when you're dealing with it at the Rosso di Valtalina level. It's elegant. It'll remind some people of Pinot Noir with a little extra tannin, or to a lot of extra tannin, depending on your sensitivity. Give this wine a try. Talk about it with friends if you're watching this, but in general, appreciate how floral, aromatic, and complicated this wine is at its price point. Okay, we're going to move into Roero, which is a very difficult region to say. It's almost a tongue twist, tongue tie kind of thing. This is mostly sandy soils. There's definitely calcareous material, limestone and clay in the Roero. And the wines in this area generally, for reds, for Nebbiolo, are going to be lighter in body and tannins. Not exclusively, but generally. The wines have to be at least 95% Nebbiolo. We're going to feature our property here, Monchiero Carbone. So let's go ahead and move into that. Monchiero Carbone has its roots in 1987 when Marco Monchiero came back to his homelands to rejuvenate his life there as a winemaker. He and his wife Lucetta Carbone brought together the two family traditions in winemaking and dating back to the early 1900s. And they took this venture together with the idea that we're going to make really top quality Roero wines, and we're going to see where that will take us, rather than trying to go in and fight our way into something more famous like Barbaresco or Barolo. And the Printi Rora Reserva is a great example of that. So let's go ahead and move to that slide where we can take a look at it. This wine is 100% Nebbiolo. It comes from clay and calcareous limestone style soils. It does use 50% new and 50% second and third use French oak. So in our marketplace, this is a great wine to take out and introduce to the U.S. palate for Nebbiolo because it has some of those directly connectable flavor profiles that our market really wants, the vanilla and the cinnamon and the clove that they identify as part of red wine. And yet it still is very Nebbiolo in the second half of the wine. So give this a taste, talk about where you can place it in your market, and we'll move on to the next one. We're now going to move into Barbaresco, land of legend and lore, centered around the three villages of Barbaresco, Neve, and Treso. The vineyards are slightly lower elevation than Barolo itself, but not a ton. They're closer to the Tanaro River, a little bit further north and to the east. Even so, you're still only talking about a 15-minute drive. It's not like a long way. The wines mature a little earlier by tradition, although you can find producers in Barbaresco making wines that will age just as long as Barolo, and you can find producers in Barolo making wines that age a little less. So any of those mass generalizations of Barolo and Barbaresco in the modern world are a little hard to follow, but in general, the soil and the climate of Barbaresco will make grapes that are a little less tannic and a little more delicate, which of course should translate to the wine. When you're dealing with Barbaresco, you're talking about a minimum of 2 years from January after harvest before they can be released as Barbaresco. So these wines you're going to see a year earlier into the marketplace for sure than you are Barolo, which also makes them attractive to buyers because they come in a little faster. So let's talk about the grand and noted Castello di Neve, ancient property, been around forever. Most assuredly, this 150-acre estate is very important to the region. The pictures of it are stunning. Visiting it is amazing. And they have so many good things going on here. They have vineyards that are in great sites like Basserine. They have, more importantly, the true Santo Stefano cru, which is their jewel in the crown and really expresses the depth and complexity and ageability that is truly capable out of a wine from Barbaresco. And if you get a chance to try the Reserva of the Santo Stefano, you should definitely do that. But we're going to try the Normale. Castello di Neve Barbaresco. It's 100% Nebbiolo, of course. It's calcareous soils. I actually have a rock on my desk from the underpinnings of the castle, which is just like, it's just a piece of limestone. And then they use some neutral oak, some large oak, and some stainless steel. They are fairly traditional in their production methods. This wine is a blend from Galena, Mesuriano, Valtorta, and a part of Santo Stefano. So there's great property going into this bottle of wine. Give it a taste. Talk about how the quality, especially if you look at what your retail price point is for this wine, the quality is really outstanding. And now we move to Giuseppe Cortese from Rabella, which is a cru in Barbaresco of great renown. Giuseppe Cortese, and this is the cru as you see in the picture. His house is on the hillside there on the right. It's quite amazing to see the man and get a sense of his connection to the land. When he came in to visit us, I was quite certain that he had never been inside his whole life is the way he looked. He looked like he just always was in the vineyard, always managing the vines. He's so connected to his land. He believes his real mission is to provide the winery with the greatest grapes possible. He runs the vineyards. Rabella is, as you saw in that picture, perfectly exposed to sunshine. It's great drainage, great mix of calcareous in with the sandy loam and clay. Just absolutely marvelous place to make Nebbiolo. And we should try it. I find this to be one of the stars in our portfolio. It is a wine I actually buy and collect for myself because I am just thrilled with its balance and complexity. Um, we did get a chance to taste when I was there back a couple of decades. The wines really age great. Give it a taste. Talk to each other about what you think and how this fits into the world of Italian wine, especially in the Piemontese section of people's wine lists and retail shops. And I think you'll find that it's almost an essential element. And now we're on to Barolo. Barolo is famous. Most people who know much about wine will know the name Barolo, even if they don't know what it's made out of. It's centered among 5 important villages: La Mora, Castiglione, Feleto, Serralunga de Alba, Monforte d'Alba, and Barolo itself. These villages are not very far apart. You can see each village more or less from the other village. There's an elevation range from about 350 to 450 meters along there. And the best crus, the best vineyard sites are at the top of the hills where the calcareous material tends to be exposed more and where the fog line is below them. And you do need to start to work on, as a salesperson, as a wine professional, knowing the important crus so that you can kind of associate them with La Mora, etc. Because there's different soil types associated, slightly different soil types in La Mora than Castiglione di Feleto. And it comes to play in wines where they show up. The places where the calcareous material is a little stronger can often show a Nebbiolo with a more saline approach, where it has that soy flavor, the umami character, and it's actually extracting calcium chloride out of the soil into the grape juice from these calcareous rocks that were once the bottom of the ocean. All right, so let's talk about Ceretto. We're going to talk about Ceretto Barolo. Ceretto is now a biodynamically farmed property. They are all about preserving Barolo for the future. They believe that biodynamics is the best way to go. Look at these pictures of their property, and the area is pretty phenomenal. They have some of the best property. They have a long-standing tradition. They have moved through the years from a style in the a 20-year ago style when I first became aware of Ceretto that was fairly modern, shorter maceration times, more new oak, etc. And they're moving back the other direction now to a lot of large oak, less new oak, letting the vineyard express itself differently than perhaps the wines did in the past, trying to tap into the real energy as the biodynamics are looking for that are coming from each property, each vineyard, and not let winemaking mute that in any way. So in the process, their cost of production have gone up to do this, and therefore the cost to us has gone up. These wines, the quality of these wines can never be argued. The wines are absolutely stunning. 100% Nebbiolo for the Ceretto Barolo, as they all are. You see these clay loam soils are that's kind of what you could call all of it, although it is slightly different from one place to the next. You will see a combination of New French and neutral, all the way into Austrian oak. They definitely have those large, 50 hectoliter barrels that you can walk in between and taste wines out of. Give this a whirl, remind yourself how awesome this wine is, and we'll move on to Baroli. Baroli. The secret with Baroli is Achille Baroli, who looked at the rest of his family and said, we are making too many different kinds of wine. It's dividing my attention. I can't be as detailed as I should be. And I absolutely will only continue to be in charge of this project for our family if we pull back and only make Barolo. An amazing commitment to quality. They have great property. They make Cirecchio, they make Vilero, and a few other things. The idea here is that they also have a single cru called Brunella that is right around their winery that they own themselves, and has dates back to the original notations of the of Castiglione di Feleto itself. So let's move on to tasting Baroli. It did have a presence in the marketplace once upon a time. Baroli worked very hard to try and buy back old stocks so that he could start over with his brand launch. And I think you'll find the wines to be revealing why he decided to do it the way he had to do it. The wines are deft and stylish. They're powerful without being overly so. I think that they are another great addition to a portfolio from Northwest Italy that would include a Chiretto. This is a different style of wine from Chiretto, and yet can stand next to that kind of quality. It stands next to our Barbaresco qualities, and I think you'll find people that are impressed by this wine. So key points to remember. Nebbiolo, late ripening, named after the fog, ripens late, and also bud break is early, so you need a very specific climate for Nebbiolo. It is unique in that it can also adapt to the altitude of Valtalina and the cooler temperatures there and create a wine that's just as interesting, in my opinion, as Piemonte, but for different reasons. We have super high quality producers available to us because of our fabulous people at LLS who have gone out and found these wines. So enjoy selling them, and best of luck to you. Grazie mille.